Hello and welcome to Vibrant Basin. I'm your host, Shayna Jones. I'm a folklorist, performance storyteller, and spoken word artist based right here in the beautiful Kootenay region of BC. Together, you and I will be diving into the stories of artists and cultural workers across the region. This season, I'll be asking guests how their artistic practice has shifted their understanding of themselves, their heritage, and their communities. Here in studio, we have Sarah Kapoor. Following a decade at the CBC, Sarah co-founded Pollinator Films, an independent production company based in Ontario. She has just launched her newest production company, the Thought Luck Corporation. Sarah Kapoor, welcome here today.
Thank you. So lovely to talk with you.
Oh my goodness gracious, I'm so grateful to have you here today. And I have been drawn to you personally, Sarah, and to your work for the last several years. And to this day, I'm still rather amazed by the impressive array of projects you have gotten to work on and things you've gotten to be involved in. And so I want to know the woman underneath it all. In your own words, can you describe for me and for all of us, what's at the heart of your artistic practice, Sarah? What's the why behind what you do?
I want to make human interest utopias. I think too much of story traffics on the neurochemistry of fear. And I'm not here for that. I think the world is scary enough. Being a human is conflicted enough that when I go to story or entertainment or inspiration, I want it to take me out of fight or flight and put me into rest and digest and contribute and inspire. So that's at the heart of my practice, is that it's really easy to get attention through things that are scary, that are negative, that are extreme. The entire internet is based on algorithms that reward extremism. And I'm not interested in contributing to that. I'm actually interested in creating something that's more difficult, which is things that actually use the pathways of love and of connection.
So to that end, have you been able to create in that way historically, or is that the direction you want to take your work and you have projects coming up that you want that fulfills that intention?
I think it's always been there. I really think it's always been there. I came up in news, right? So I have done the other for sure. And I think to some degree it's why I, left news media. Even though I have an incredible appreciation for the role of journalism in the world, we need that work to tell, a factual account of what is happening versus the story version of it or the propaganda version of it, which is inescapable. They're always mixed. But it's always been there as my driver. I have actually walked away and left opportunities because it was, working with the worst of human nature to get attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then, can you name for us a project that you have gotten to work on or that you will be working on that touches on love and laughter and the other things that are drawing you right now, as opposed to that algorithm of fear?
Well, I would say that, my first movie, my first feature, The Bad Mother, it was about, a woman who was struggling to balance home, life, family, and career. And
Can I just interrupt you
Yeah.
as a bad podcast host? Can you tell us the story that you're describing, The Bad Mother? Who is that story about, Sarah Kapoor? And in that movie, who produced and played the main role, just so that everybody's on the same page?
Okay, podcast host. Trying to be sly, trying to be stealth there. I wrote, directed, and produced the movie, and I did star as the lead. It is loosely based on my experience of probably my 30s, but very much the experience of so many people in my cohort. So it's not a documentary. It's a feature dramatic. It's fiction, but it was designed to reflect so many people's stories, and it's it was trying to find um, it was using humor to tell a truth about what that phase of life is like, where you're just torn between two different competing parts of yourself, and then how the main character finds a way forward that is neither perfect nor pretty nor a full solution. And it was true to, like, no, there's no perfect ending. You kind of muddle your way through, and um, you find insight just in the doing. You find yourself in the doing. You don't find perfection, but I think by the end of it, the character moves from sort of an outcome based approach to her life to a process based approach. It's like she finally gets that it's about the journey and not the destination.
That makes so much sense. And that just perfectly leads me to an article that you've written for today's Parent back in 2020, I think it was.
It was like the month it came out maybe 2 weeks before everything shut down before the pandemic. We didn't even know it was a thing. It wasn't even named at that time.
Just wild, just wild. But that article speaks, I've read it, and I believe it speaks to what you just mentioned about the main character in your film, The Bad Mother, and this switch from outcome based approach to life to process based approach to life. And you have some really poignant words at the end of that article. And I would love for everybody to be able to hear what you have said. Could you read the last few lines of that article for all of us? Because I got a question for you.
Sure. I've come to have a new view of the old adage, wherever you go, there you are. I think for me, it's wherever you go, there you become. In this season of life, one that I can sense is ending, I chose to be far from the crowd, choosing to cocoon versus expose en route to transformation. Time will tell what emerges from that choice.
So, Sarah Kapoor,
Mm,
tell us what has emerged, what has time shown from your choice to cocoon
mm,
versus expose over the
mm.
last number of years. What has come out of that choice?
Well, I think I can probably answer it in terms of family and in terms of profession. Um, and, maybe in a future interview, 15 years out, I'll tell you how that choice affected my spirit. Um, I think choosing to be in Creston and the Kootenays during my 30s and 40s, early 40s, it was difficult professionally. I feel like I took a step back um, in order to be a more present parent and a more present daughter. I came here not just for my children. I came here also to, serve my elders, my mom, my family. And the trade-off was career for sure. And that would have happened anyways, I think. But the combination of family plus being in a rural, remote location made being a producer really difficult. And I think it would have been difficult anyways, but the two of them together were like, there was no lack of clarity that there were things I couldn't do the way I had done them through my 20s. Um, I think on a family level, I have an intact family. I feel like I have served my elders. I feel like my kids are healthy, and I think they've had a pretty decent childhood by being here. One that was a lot closer to my own childhood than I would have been able to give them in the city. We get along, and I'm very grateful for that. Um, and I just don't know that I could have parented the same way if I'd been in the city. I don't think I could have. We have time, we have space, we have less competition. We're not keeping up with the Joneses, which I think is the best thing about the Kootenays. One of the great things is that, I was joking about being an iconoclast, but I think the Kootenays is just filled with people who get to march to the beat of their own drum in a way that's not possible elsewhere. I love that. And I think professionally, I thought I would come out of this. So my kids are 10 and 15. I thought I would come out of this phase really having to rejoin my producing world a step back. I'm very happy to say, as of this year, as I'm taking some major steps forward, the disadvantage that I thought it would be has not turned out to be the case. In fact, I think the way that I've done it only now. In fact, even in the movie, I reflected what I thought it would be like, which is that at the end, she has to take a step back when she re-enters a more traditional way of working. That has not been the case. I actually think by cocooning, I've come back to the world of production in a big way this year. I've come back with a clearer voice, and people seem to be lit up by that voice, by the clarity of that voice, by the differentiation of that voice, by the lack of jadedness in that voice. So I think time is saying, yeah, that was okay. And then also too, I also feel like, so in Hindu mythology, Indian mythology, there's a story of a royal couple that was actually in exile for 14 years, and they were sent away from the kingdom and spent 14 years in exile, and then they came back to their rightful place after having gone through all sorts of dips and demons and valleys, and when they come back, and they are welcomed back. In fact, and the path back is lit with lights. And actually, that's Diwali. That whole festival is around that return. And, my kid's 15, and I feel like I've done my 14 years of time in the forest. And I've felt a real welcoming and a sense of place in my professional world this year, which has been very, very unexpected. It was not what I predicted.
Wow. Wow. So that I'm clear, the cocooning you're talking about, I think what I'm hearing from you is, yes, cocooning in within the family as mother, showing up more fully there. But is it right to say that cocooning in Creston, where you're living now, that's a part of the cocoon you're speaking of? And having been in Creston 14, 15 years now, however long your exile period has been, am I right?
I have sort of the kid years as my period of exile, but for 10 years now.
Wow. But it sounds like this exile, as you're calling it, is bearing fruit. You're in the middle of witnessing the fruit that it's bearing.
Yeah.
So you have used the language, digging into you in your mind a little bit, you've used the language of fermentation, this being a season of fermentation, summer of fermentation, I think you've said. Is that related to cocooning in Creston, or is this a different thing you're learning?
No, it's like quite literally fermenting food.
Oh, tell us more, Sarah Kapoor.
Well, I'm sure we could find a wine metaphor work, but no, I like, and that's just it, right? So I got time to be that person. I got time to be like with the land, with the earth, like, like everybody here, we're all bonded by having a garden. And I think that's part of the joy of this particular cocoon. You can have like totally different politics than the neighbor to the left and the neighbor to the right, but you're all gonna share zucchini. And I think that is it. Like I have to tell you this funny joke with the grocery store. And this is a secondhand story, but I love it so much. Um, this, I guess, out of towner was in the local grocery store, and it's, the summertime, and they were buying a cucumber. And the person behind them is like, guess they don't have any friends. So I just think that's a very Creston story. Like, nobody should be buying a cucumber in the summer. Something is very wrong socially if you have to buy a cucumber at the grocery store. Anyways, no, I just actually really, I have a big garden, and that's something I've been able to cultivate. And I think that's been, like, as a metaphor, like, just the patience to do that is part of the patience and commitment that one needs to do any big project. So if you're producing, as a producer, producing anything has a lot of crossover skills. So whether it's a garden or a film or a series, there's a lot of crossover skills. Paying close attention, watering every day, choosing, weeding, it's all the same stuff, just with different words and different languages. But yeah, so I feel like I discovered that you could preserve and transform food through fermentation this year. And it felt like a miracle. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, I have a whole new, like, you can transform food through fire, through water, through air, and now through earth, through fermentation. And so I just, Michael Pollan has an amazing series called Cooked on Netflix. I'm totally going to recommend watching it. And they have one whole episode on fermentation. And I just figured it out. And so, like, everything I've grown this year, I have put in a jar and some brine on my counter, and I'm making cold fire, like, it's bubbling and it's turning into, like, I just absolutely tease my husband, who, like, bought probiotics. And I'm just like, you don't need probiotics. This is what you got three variations there. There's like 30 in my jar. So I had a lot of fun with that. And I just think this particular cocooning in the Kootenays has allowed me to learn and practice different alchemies, which I'm bringing to the next chapter of my professional life and my artistic practice.
Oh my goodness gracious. So then, dear Sarah,
Hmm.
the alchemy that you have discovered and that you're practicing, and as it sounds like you emerge from the cocoon, can you, from that vantage point, speak to what you see in the filmmaking industry today, and what you see other filmmakers who have chosen to cocoon themselves, or who have chosen to live in rural spaces or in the Kootenay specifically, and as they dream or long about entering the filmmaking world, what do your eyes see in the filmmaking world as it is today, and B, what words do you have for the rural filmmaker who wants to enter the filmmaking industry as it is today?
Okay. Filmmaking is brutal. It's a bad business. This is what I want to tell you, and it's what I want to tell everybody. It's hierarchical, it's terrible hours, it's high risk. It's dumb. It's a dumb business. I don't want to be, well, this is, I'm here to be blunt a little bit and
Thank
diplomatic.
you.
But I see a really unique opportunity for rural and remote filmmakers. So if you are making films the traditional way, it's very high risk. You're spending 3 to 5 years of your life making something that's completely custom for a market that is subjective, whether they will like it or not, and then has a 6-month shelf life. Just think about that. Like, it's like, for any product and service, that's so high risk. It's effectively like being an athlete. It's like being an Olympian. You spend 4 years for 3 spots, and there's all these things and all this competition that could knock you off that podium, that could have you never make a chance. But you've given 4 years of your life training every day for a very, very slim chance of something that the value of which, if you even get it, is like, do you remember athletes past the moment of their thing, right? Can they monetize that Olympic gold past a certain date? So I think that I didn't know that. I think I was so idealistic that thinking like an artist and an idealist before thinking like a business person, that I really didn't understand how high risk this business is. So, what I see as possible now, how high risk it is and how hard the business is. Like it's 10, 16-hour days. It's very, very difficult. So what I think rural and remote filmmakers can do is they can actually, because of the lower cost of living, they can actually give themselves a longer amount of time to come up with their vision. And here's what I would advise, and that I'm going forward in my own model. If you're going to spend 3 to 5 years on anything, you better come out of it with 2 assets. One, the high risk artistic output, which is subjective, that people may or may not like, and that you may or may not make any money off of, and which has a very short shelf life. You have to pair that with, what is the other thing that I'm making alongside that is low risk? So if I ever have like a 10, $12 million budget that I would do for a project that's rural and remote, I would actually, instead of renting location, I would buy the location. I would make it, I would construct it, use it for the project, thereby employing people and serving them. And at the end of it, sell that or transform it into affordable housing, so that at the end of the production, you've got a real estate asset and a film asset. So I think that is something, and this is something that I've just been coming up with as I really dive deep and like, okay, I know how to make a story work. I know why I'm telling the stories that I'm telling, but how as a remote rural filmmaker, what's the unique opportunity? The unique opportunity is that you could come out with 2 assets, and that you could also 2 or more, that mitigates the high risk and have a high quality of life while you're doing it because of the lower costs of living. This is my plan. This is the plan for the Thought Life Corporation, and it's built on 20 years of working for a giant institution, then having my own independent production company, and learning firsthand how the machine works and being the boss of that. So now I'm going to leverage all of that to mitigate the high risk with a lower risk aspect to all productions. This is very business minded, but it has to be if I really want to be sustainable and continue doing this for another 20 years, I have had to figure that out. And that's what I'm really doing this year as I launch my next company.
And that next company, is that the Thought Luck Corporation?
Yes.
So can you tell us just a little bit more about this project?
It's actually a company that
Yes.
I just incorporated. So my first company that I co-owned and co-founded, we ran for almost 12 years. And we were on a project to project to project model. I want Thought Luck to be able to figure out the business side of it so that we can scale, so that we can do like 5 to 7, have 5 to 7 things going, versus finish one, go back to 0, do the next one, go back to 0. I've been working in this business for 20 years, and it's been do a project, finish it, do a project, finish it. So my next real necessary evolution is, how do you scale? How do you do, 5 or 6 things? So that's what Thought Luck will do.
Got it. Got it. And so I feel now inspired to ask you the Vibrant Basin podcast $1,000,000 question. So, Sarah Kapoor, how has your artistic practice shaped, shattered, or simply shifted your understanding of yourself, your heritage, or your community?
Hmm. Well, I think the weight of having a voice that's in the world, I really I carry that. That's very heavy for me. It's why I'm largely not on social media. I feel like I'm only doing this podcast because it's you, Shayna Jones. It's
Thank you, Sarah Kapoor.
no, it's a big deal. I don't want to speak or proclaim or profess anything unnecessarily. I feel like we all talk too much nowadays, and we put too much commentary out into the world. So I feel like I want to be very considered in what I make public. I'm not a, I think my practice and maybe the cocooning um, has made me maybe, more reserved and more responsible. I would also say just that the ecosystem in which communication happens has just changed so dramatically in our lives. Um, I think I would rather speak less and be very clear on like the weight of what I'm putting into the world. And I think this cocoon maybe allowed for that because there wasn't the pressure to like, I gave myself permission to not be seen and heard. And I think that has made me very clear on what I want to be seen and heard for, and not panicky about being quiet. I think there's just so much like pressure to respond to every single thing that's every single current affair that's happening. I have to say something about that. No, you don't. You don't. You don't have to actually voice your opinion on everything. And when you do, it should really matter. So I think maybe that's what's shifting is my confidence of when to use and not use my voice. That's shifting. That's evolving. I hope that answers your question. It's a good question. It made me think.
Good, good. And I'm glad that we get to hear you think. Now, there might be there might be seeds of the answer to this question in some of the things you've told us earlier. But would you dare to venture to speak to what it is you want your voice to speak out into the world? What are you willing to speak to?
I know that I want to make things that make people want to live. I really want to speak to the creation of that which is life affirming. I, you know, I could get your attention by saying something scary or frightening or negative or extreme, but I don't want to have your attention for that. And in fact, if I do that, I'm very clear that if I did that, you'd have to have 5 positive things happen to you to cancel out 1 negative. That formula's like, it's sort of well known for every, like the negative carries such a, it's fast. It'll grow the neural pathway faster. So I want to be in the long, slow business of I'm okay with doing 5 times more work to cancel out the weight of the one negative. I think it's this ratio. It's just sort of like, it's not the easy road. It's slow and repetitive. And I just feel like our landscape and most media, when I say it traffics in the neurochemistry of fear, it's just because it's easy. It's so much easier to capture one's attention by being extreme, by being threatening, by being scary. And I feel like there's just not enough content. Like, basically, this is my core statement right now. It's like, we have to create some utopias, because otherwise, if all of our storytelling is dystopian, our mirror neurons are going to actually have that be reality. So I'm putting myself in the camp of creating models and stories and things that our mirror neurons would actually help make our realities better. That's what I want to give a voice to. I want to give a voice to, maybe this is what it is. I think there's some responsibility for storytellers to think about, what are they creating in the world? Like, is this really helping make the world not even a better place, just a livable place? Right? I care about what I'm as fastidious about what I watch and listen to as I am the food that I consume. It changes your chemistry. So I would like to, if my stories are, probiotic vitamins, I want them to be good for you. I want you to feel better after having engaged with something I made, or engaging with me, or engaging with anyone who's part of Thoughtluck. I want you to feel enriched by engaging with my content, with me, with my company.
Sarah Kapoor, we need more of you in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your voice even that much, even just speaking to that, making us aware of that, even just in this context, I know is already one of those points in the 5 against the negative that so many of us are facing. And so for myself and for others listening, if we want to stay close to some of this beauty or positive energy, neural pathway making work that you are doing, how can we stay close to you, Sarah? How can we find you?
I like being not found.
I know.
No, I'm actually planning to be more present and more accessible. It's not officially launched yet, but thoughtluck.com is a place where you'll be able to see things about half a year from now. sarahkapoor.ca is where you can see some of my past work. These are and it's rough right now, but it's getting close to polished. So I will make an announcement of where you can know more about what I'm up to about half a year from now, certainly in 2024. Yeah, I am emerging from my cocoon quite consciously. So yeah, I will be able to be much more found than I have been for the last 10 years for sure. But it wasn't like nothing was happening. A lot was happening in that time. And I think maybe that's another thing too, is like, just if people are quiet, just don't assume that nothing's going on for a person.
Sarah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for making me articulate what's been going on inside.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you for saying yes to this. I believe you when you say that you would have said no if it was not just the right circumstance. So thank you. Thank you for listening to the Vibrant Basin podcast. I'm your host, Shayna Jones. Vibrant Basin is produced by the West Kootenay Regional Arts Council. Thank you to our sound technician and editor, Carlo Alcos, and our producer, Kaylee Linz, with production support from Margaret Tessman and Natasha Smith. Thank you to the Government of Canada and United Way British Columbia for their support of this project. You can find all our episodes on your favorite podcast platform or the West Kootenay Regional Arts Council website. We'll be releasing a new episode for you every 2 weeks. Stay tuned and stay vibrant.